Hey, what's up, people of the internet? You're not going to believe this, but today I've got a very special guest, Mr. Ian Cron, the Enneagram extraordinaire. I've got a lot to learn about this. I'm excited to grow. I'm excited to learn. So are we ready to go?
I'm so ready.
Let's do this. Okay. So the Enneagram, you've made it famous. Did it make you famous? I don't know. I'm going to go with you made it famous. So in a quick nutshell, walk me through what the Enneagram is.
Yeah. Well, the Enneagram is an ancient personality typing system that teaches that there are 9 basic personality types in the world, one of which we gravitate toward and adopt in childhood as a way to feel safe and navigate the world of relationships. And very importantly, it teaches that for each of those 9 types, there's an unconscious motivation that powerfully influences how that type predictably, habitually acts, thinks, and feels from moment to moment.
Okay. So does that typology get wired into us biologically or experientially or all of it?
All of it. I mean, let's face it, kids are born into the world with certain biological and genetic wiring, right? I have a child who was born anxious. Okay. Some kids, are born slightly depressive.
Right.
Eeyore types,
Yes.
right? You have other kids who are born sunnier than, a blue day in Colorado. So there's that dimension.
Okay.
Then we have familial and cultural impact on the development of a personality, right? So obviously trauma little t, trauma big T. You have cultural forces that come to us through school, through coaches, through teachers, through life experience, and also, social context, right? Like a kid who grows up in a Latin American country may have a different cultural experience than a kid who grows up in an Asian culture. Right. Values differ, and so those affect how a personality is formed among. But as you know, personality is one of the most hotly contested debates in all of psychology.
That's right. So how young does someone begin registering a pathway or a number?
Well, I think that the building blocks of personality are in place probably around the age of 5 or 6, but it's wet cement.
I like that. Okay.
And so I recommend to people that they don't start messing around with children in the Enneagram until they're in their adolescent years and later adolescent years. Because as you know, lots of adolescents try on a new personality every week just to see how it goes.
I know, and I know grown-ups that do that as well, man. Okay, so before we get into some of the deeper questions, I'm so excited to have a fellow. Is it bad if I call you a fellow nerd? I'm so excited about this.
I'm a total geek.
It makes my heart feel good. Walk us through those 9 types.
Okay.
Is there a way to kind of 30,000 foot them?
I think so. I'll do my best.
Okay, cool.
So ones are called the improvers, and their unconscious motivation is a need to perfect themselves, others, and the world, and just about everything they do.
Right.
Okay. 2s are called the helpers. Their unconscious motivation is a need to be needed, loved, and appreciated by others. Okay. 3s are called the performers. They have a need to succeed, to appear successful, and to avoid failure at all costs.
Okay.
4s are probably the most complicated number on the Enneagram. They have a need to be special and unique in order to compensate for what they perceive is something lacking in their essential makeup.
Okay.
5s are called the investigators. They have a need to collect and gather information about everything, particularly a niche subject or two, in order to fend off feelings of inadequacy and overwhelmment, right? In the world. 6s are called the loyalists. Their unconscious motivation is a need to feel safe, secure, and supported in what feels like an unpredictable and chaotic world to them. 7s, the enthusiasts, the joy bombs of the Enneagram. Their unconscious motivation is to sidestep or avoid psychologically or emotionally distressing thoughts and feelings by living in a future filled with unlimited optimistic possibility. Right? 8s are called the challengers. Their unconscious motivation is the need to assert strength and control over the environment and others in order to mask feelings of vulnerability and weakness. And then finally, the 9s are called the peacemakers, and their unconscious motivation is to avoid conflict, maintain connection, and preserve a sense of inner hakuna matata. Tranquility, peace.
It's all good, man.
Go with the flow. Don't rock the boat. Yeah.
Okay, so I took your assessment over the weekend and prepped for this. And it surprised me. It came back that said I was a 2 strong wing 1.
Right.
Tell me about myself.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, one of the wonderful things about the Enneagram is it's not like a regular trait system.
Okay.
Right, which only tells you what you do.
Okay.
Right. One of the things that the Enneagram does is it tells you why you do it.
Okay.
Which is really, really important.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Now, just so you know, you actually are all 9 numbers.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, you contain all 9 numbers. Everything I just described, you could say, well, I do that sometimes, I do that sometimes, right? You do contain all 9 numbers. You just have one that's dominant that you just click into by default all of the time. But you have access to the energies and resources of all those other types. It's just you specialize in one.
And is that and again, that's just a cocktail of experience and genetics and and my family but most importantly this it's this little bubble I've created to protect myself from whatever system I was thrust into.
Yes.
Or systems.
Yeah. So as a 2, right, as I mentioned, your unconscious motivation is the need to be needed and to be loved and appreciated by others, right?
Right.
That can be great.
Yeah.
That's the good thing.
Right.
You all are the warmest, I say supportive, generous, kind people who naturally create environments in which people feel safe to tell their stories and to be themselves. You're the kind of person who at the airport gate, someone will sit next to you and you'll just be sitting there reading and they might just turn to you and go, I'm getting a divorce. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you're like, like there are other types that do not get that kind of, interaction with people. But 2s kind of have what I call a sort of a wide circle of concern for other people. You know what I mean? Like people just feel this radiating sort of concern for them. Here's the dark side. The downside is that often 2s, the care and the help that they give to others is calculating and manipulative.
Okay.
Because what they're really looking for is the love and appreciation that they get from others for helping them.
Gotcha.
So it becomes kind of a pipeline. It's like it's where you put the hose in the tank. It's like I need love and appreciation. I need to be needed by others. Okay? Yeah. So it can come with strings attached, right? Like I will do this for you so that I will meet your needs so you will meet my needs without my actually having to come right out
and say I need some support
and acknowledge that I have needs.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Like 2s, if you say to a 2, what do you need? A 2 will go, I'm not quite sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what everybody else needs. And that's, in a sense, why you have so much trouble knowing your own needs, is that you've been so exquisitely attuned, almost psychically, to other people's feelings that you've lost touch with your own.
And where does that distill down? What's that defense rooted in?
Well, I think sometimes children who are 2s grow up in situations where they've had to step in and become the caregivers, right? Or they have a natural disposition toward being a kid who's just very kind and warm and generous. They get stroked like heck for it.
Gotcha.
To the point that the kid's thinking, if I just overdo this, I'm going to get even more strokes, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And then after a while, personality largely is made up of adaptive stratagems and ways of coping in the world, ways of showing up in the world and getting our needs met.
Right.
So somehow or another, 2s get a message growing up like, if I want to get my needs met, I got to meet the needs of others.
So my dad was a SWAT hostage negotiator and in the city of Houston. So when things were, quote unquote, going down, I have these distinct memories of him. He'd get this little cockeyed grin, and he'd put his bulletproof vest on and put a suit on. And I just have these images of him driving the other way while everyone's leaving. He's going in. And it was just this, like, and he was a homicide detective. And then he left that job about halfway through my life and became really an atypical minister at a large church, because he had this police background, but he had this I would call this underbelly sensibility. He knew how the systems worked, and people would kind of come out of the woodwork to get his help and support. Right. And so I grew up with this idea that when things go down, you show up and you step in that gap, and then you do things that nobody else will. Oh, there's a dead body in there? I'm going in that room too, right?
Right.
Someone has a question about sex. I'll answer that, right? And you, it becomes an identity. So I resonated when I read this.
Right.
What is the So you say the dark side is I can go searching for it.
Yes.
And looking for people to solve, or looking for people to inject myself into.
Yeah, sometimes it can become smothering. The love can become smothering.
Tell me
overwhelming.
About that.
Well, you can become overgenerous.
To where it's weird or freaks people out?
Yeah, or step into situations. We always say that there's a deadly sin or passion associated with each of the 9 types.
Okay.
And
tell me what's my deadly sin?
It's pride.
Okay.
And what the pride is that for 2s, they begin to believe that they're more attuned to what others need than that person is.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So that's where the pride shows up. It also shows up in the 2's secret belief that others are more needy than they are.
Okay.
And that they are the only ones who really have the answer for that person's problems or need, right? So they make great therapists.
Right.
Okay. Tons of therapists are 2s. And partly because they have like this radar. It's like they can zero right in on what the other person needs and what the other person feels. They know what you feel before you do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it can be a great gift, right? Yeah. But it can become a great liability if what you're expecting is for the other person to meet your needs in return for your meeting theirs without your having to acknowledge you have needs.
Gotcha.
There's another piece of the pride.
Waltzing through life thinking I've crested any sort of need.
Yeah, it's also this. The pride shows up for the 2 in their belief, again, unconscious belief, that they have all the time, treasure, talent, and resources to meet the needs of everybody.
No, that's my great. If I had to distill down a couple of great sins of mine, one of the big ones would be completely dismissing this idea of time and resources. Right. So I say yes to everything, and then I find myself overwhelmed, and then I get pissed at the person for having asked me, as opposed to like, how dare you take my time, or what a favor I'm doing for you. Yes,
that's how you know you're in trouble, right?
Right.
Is when resentment is aroused.
That's exactly right.
So the resentment is, this is when you're in a bad space. Right. Look at everything I have done for you. I always show up for you, but when I need help, no one's there for me.
Gotcha.
That's sometimes where a 2 will go.
Right.
And when they do, it can get kind of aggressive.
Right.
Which is unusual for a 2 that's usually warm and affable and amiable.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So what's a strong wing mean? When it's I'm a strong wing 1 or a wing 4, what do those mean?
Okay, so you have 2 numbers adjacent to your dominant type.
Okay.
Your wing can only be one of those numbers. So for you, it would be a 1, right, or a 3. Okay. You can't be a 2-wing 6.
Okay.
Or a 2-wing 7. You can only those 2 numbers on either side of yours can be your dominant wing, one of those 2.
Okay.
Okay. It explains a little bit why two people of the same type can look very, very different. So a 2-wing 3 would be far more ambitious than a 2-wing 1.
Okay.
A 2-wing 1 would be more introverted than a 2-wing 3.
Okay.
A 2-wing 3 would be more likely to be out there in the world, very much more comfortable in front of crowds, things of that nature. A 2-wing 1 would be a little bit more disciplined, organized, self-disciplined. and a little bit more of a critical thinker than a 2 with a 3 wing.
Okay.
You are in what's called the feeling or the heart triad.
Okay.
You are the most interpersonal of all numbers if you're a 2. There's no number that you go to bed at night thinking about relationships and you wake up in the morning thinking about relationships if you're a 2.
Yeah.
That's what matters to you more than anything else.
Right. But isn't it the most important thing, though, right?
Well, in balance.
Here we go with balance. It's yeah, because I think everything's about relationships, and so I would suggest that the other 8 numbers need to catch up.
Well,
which is, I guess, the pride of a 2.
I'll let them know.
Let them. Yes. So when I am doing good, when life is humming along, what things do I need to be conscious of?
Well, as you know, I think I'm a big Carl Jung fan.
Okay.
Right? Jung is the biggest influence I've had in the world of psychology. When you're doing well, you are operating with a degree of self-awareness where all the unconscious stuff beneath the waterline of consciousness, right, is just continually being brought into the light, right? And that's one of the great things about the Enneagram. The Enneagram doesn't just tell you why you do the things you do. It doesn't just tell you what the things you do are. It tells you why you do them.
Right.
That's the material that's in our unconscious.
Okay.
Right? And that's really important to know.
Yes.
Right? Just knowing what you do, I mean, you know, that
congratulations.
Really,
that's a golf clap moment.
Congratulations.
That's right.
That's a polite golf applause, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the more self-knowledge and self-awareness you can get in your life, the better off you're going to be. You know, I always like to say that ignorance is bliss unless it concerns self-awareness.
Right.
Right.
So one of the great critics of a Jungian analysis is that people know what's down there, then they weaponize it. They use it for their benefit.
They can.
They use it against other people. Right?
They can.
Tell me why. So I'll get meta for a second. We've had more. We're going to take in fMRIs. We're going to take in more psychological inquiries. We've had millions of people suddenly become mental health scholars and researchers and practitioners, and it feels as though the world has spun itself sideways. And I want to say that in a causal way, but I've had to be reflective over the last 6 or 8 months and wonder, is some of this stuff, were we not intended to dig into some of this? Do the solution-focused folks have it right? What's the problem? Let's solve this problem. Let's get to tomorrow.
I'm not going to say they're wrong. I think different people benefit from different modalities.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And some from sort of an eclectic approach, right?
Okay.
Drawing on CBT, solution-focused, Jungianism, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I'm of the school that says the more you can know about yourself, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
And the more that you can integrate that material, the better off you're going to be.
That's the magic. Okay.
Right? So one of the things the Enneagram does that I love, and we talk about this in the Road Back to You, is that it shows you how your blessing is your curse and your curse is your blessing. Right?
Yep.
It tells you that in your shadow, it's not just bad stuff in your shadow. There's beautiful stuff. I mean, Carl Jung called it the golden shadow, right? Which is all the stuff that you picked up as a kid that weren't things about you that the people around you, the important people around you, seemed real or perceived to not think were good, that were actually beautiful about you, that need to be retrieved.
It's had a light shine on it, right?
Yeah, you need to bring it back out. There's stuff that should stay in your shadow. There are animal impulses and instincts that need to stay in your shadow. There's some beautiful stuff in there that needs to be brought back out and revealed to the world, which is often happens at midlife when people say, you know, I feel like I've been living off the wrong script for the last 40 years. I think I left something behind in childhood. I got to go in there and get it and bring it out and start to use it in the world.
So how do you, what's the filter by which you decide that needs to stay and this needs to be seen?
Well, I think if you have an impulse to hurt somebody or yourself, you know what I mean, or something like that, that's an impulse that probably needs to stay in the shadow. Okay. It's there.
Yep.
Trust me, you know and I know that people commit crimes all the time, crimes of passion, where something popped out of the shadow, you know, when that needed to remain there.
My dad used to tell me, as a murder detective, man, the difference between me on this side of the table and that guy on that side of the table, it's that big.
Yeah, opportunity.
It was this. Yeah,
sure.
It was
Circumstance
a weird
and
little
opportunity.
moment. Yeah,
right.
That we're all much more similar than we're comfortable believing we are.
Yes. So really, what the Enneagram does, in all honesty, right? This isn't a deep psychometric and I don't want to confuse your audience, but like an MMPI.
Well, so let's do that real quick before you're about to tell me what this is. So I want to take the skeptical view.
Go for it.
I was one of the first folks to take the Strengths Finder back in the day. I've rolled my eyes at the Myers-Briggs for years, and it's just the last 2 or 3 years come out that it's kind of mostly made up. And psychometric after psychometric.
Right.
On top of, I've become a vocal antagonist against our obsession with mental health diagnostics.
Right.
You are anxiety is not a disease.
It's a code, but it's an insurance.
It's an insurance code, right? It's not a way of being. It's not an identity. It's not a disease. So, how does this differentiate from what would be yet another diagnostic or yet another code?
Okay, so let me just, before I answer that, and remind me of the question in case I go off. Okay, here's what I would say. I tend to believe what Robert Box, the great statistician, said. He said, all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Yes, I love that.
Right? So, honestly, the Enneagram, Strengths Finders, DISC, right? They're models. They're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, are they useful? Are they true enough that you can benefit from them? And I would argue that the Enneagram is wrong, air quotes, but useful. It's close enough. So what you get from this is 9 low-resolution pictures of the interior world of people and how they move through the world. It's not perfect, right? But it's if you even got 10% more clarity about your wife, your child, your colleague, right? You would be so more greatly advantaged in your ability to relate to them that it would be amazing.
Yes.
Just 10% more
This
clarity.
was not a low res on me. I think I told you off air, I felt like I was sitting outside. I took this on my back porch.
Right.
And I felt like I was suddenly standing on my back patio with no clothes on.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It was real good. And I'm a highly skeptical person.
Yes.
And it was real good.
Well, and what distinguishes it from those other things, right? These aren't diagnoses, right? These are descriptions, right? These are sort of just a pastiche or a collage, if you will, that helps people understand why they do the things they don't want to do and don't do the things that they want to do. Does that make sense?
Well, and that's where it was more. I felt it more useful, right? So if I go to a doctor and I'm having a bad week and they slap general anxiety disorder on me, that's going to be about duration and acuity, right? And if I go read Strengths Finder, it's going to say, you like to maximize things.
That's static.
Right. This tells me when you're leaning this way, this is where, to get back this way, this is why you're leaning this way in this moment. This is the history of why you're leaning this way.
Yes.
And here's what you can do to lean the other way.
It recognizes, the Enneagram does a great job of recognizing that the human personality is adaptive and fluid. The way your personality is functioning right now would be a whole lot different than if you were in a hostage negotiation.
Right.
Your personality, as you know, the moment you meet a personality that is rigid and cannot change from circumstance to circumstance, that you really are in the presence of somebody who
energetically you feel it. You just know it, right?
Yeah, and you also know that there may be a presence of real pathology.
That's right.
Some kind of personality disorder that's really grabbed hold.
Right.
So in my mind, again, you know what? The Enneagram is for garden variety neurotics.
I don't think so. I think it's more important than that.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
This felt like it can scale, meaning it gave me tools for myself.
Yes.
I didn't have to go to somebody else to then clarify this and then spend 7 years with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It feels like a coach could walk me through this and let me ping pong back and forth and almost as a bowling bumpers as opposed to a clinician, as a doctor. Right?
Yeah. I always say as a therapist that if I'd had this when I had a private practice, that it would have saved me 2 years per client.
That's it. Yeah. Because it gives them some things that, I love that.
And a vernacular for the two of us to talk about. Yeah.
So tell me about this book here, man.
Row back to you, man. It is a great, if I say so myself, but I'm very proud of it in this sense. That's a great introduction or primer to the Enneagram. Most of the books on the Enneagram are about 600 pages, and they're quite technical. Yeah. Content rich, but not something you have to quit your day job to read, right?
I can tell you that everyone in this Ramsey organization, God almighty, dude, there is like the Bible, and then there's the road back to you, man. For real. Everyone, yes, see, they're all, yes, this is the book, man, the one to get in on it. I love that you're talking about people swan dive in the deep end of a pool sometimes, and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. So that is a wonderful primer. It just helps people know enough about the Enneagram that it can move a needle positively in their life if they choose never to read another book on the Enneagram again. Okay?
Yep.
That's really basically all I wanted that book to be. And then if it sends you down the wormhole into the more technical, deeper material, then that's great too. But it doesn't require you to.
Okay. And we've got 30 seconds left.
Yes.
Give me one thing that's keeping you up at night as you've sat with thousands of people.
Right.
You spoke to thousands of people. What's one thing right now that's keeping you up at night? And what's one thing that you are deeply optimistic about?
I think, and this is an obvious answer, but I think the current social and cultural times that we find are in trouble me greatly, for reasons we don't have time to talk to. But I think for all, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of politics or social beliefs, if that's not keeping you awake at night, then there's something really wrong.
You're neurotic, right?
There's something, you really are living in denial. Something I'm really optimistic about. I think we could really kind of emerge from this pandemic as wiser people, not to diminish any of the pain, suffering, and death that's been associated with it. I think the time that we've had to spend in solitude and with ourselves a product of it could be more self-knowledge, compassion, empathy, and self-awareness.
What a gift. Huh?
Yeah, I think that could be fantastic.
That's awesome. All right, so where do the internet's people of the internet's, where do they find you?
Well, you know what they can do is they can take that IEQ-9 test.
Yes.
If they go to Ian Morgan Cron, IANMORGANCRON.com, and actually plug in your name as a voucher code, John Delony.
Awesome.
Then they'll get a 20% discount.
So please do this. Your neighbors deserve to have you do this. You deserve to have you do this. Your family, your loved ones, your communities. It's an incredible, from a skeptic, this is legit. Go to ianmorgancron.com. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you folks for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.